Think about the device you're watching this video on. Your phone, tablet, laptop, or TV. Hidden inside it are dozens, sometimes hundreds, of tiny semiconductor chips. They're so small that you rarely notice them. But these microscopic pieces of silicon are the brains behind almost everything we use every single day. Now, imagine waking up one morning and discovering that these chips have suddenly become impossible to find. Car factories stop producing vehicles. New smartphones are delayed for months. Gaming consoles disappear from store shelves. Even hospitals struggle to get life-saving medical equipment. This isn't science fiction. It actually happened. Within just a few months, one of the smallest inventions in human history triggered one of the biggest supply chain crises the world had ever seen. Companies lost billions of dollars. Millions of products were delayed. Entire industries came to a standstill. But here's the strange part. No natural disaster destroyed every factory. No global cyber attack shut down production. No single country caused the crisis alone. Instead, the disaster was created by a perfect chain of events that almost nobody saw coming. To understand how this happened, we first need to answer one important question.
What exactly is a semiconductor chip? At first glance, it looks incredibly simple. A tiny black square covered with microscopic metal connections. Nothing about it looks valuable. But inside that tiny package are billions of microscopic transistors, each one acting like a tiny electronic switch. Together, they process information at incredible speeds. Every tap on your smartphone, every online payment, every GPS direction, every Netflix movie, every AI chatbot, every modern aircraft, every satellite orbiting Earth, all of them depend on these tiny chips working perfectly. In many ways, semiconductor chips are to the digital world what oil was to the industrial age. Countries fight to control them. Companies spend billions developing them. Governments consider them a matter of national security. Because without chips, modern civilization simply cannot function. But if they're so important, why are only a handful of companies capable of making the world's most advanced chips? And how did one unexpected crisis expose just how fragile the entire global economy really was? The answer begins thousands of kilometers away, inside one of the most advanced factories ever built by humanity.
To understand why the entire world depends on these tiny chips, we first need to understand how they're made. It all begins with one of the most common materials on Earth: sand. Yes, ordinary sand. Hidden inside that sand is silicon, the element that makes modern computing possible. But turning a handful of sand into the brain of a smartphone isn't simple. It's one of the most precise manufacturing processes ever created by humanity. The silicon is purified until it's more than 99.99999999% pure. Even a single microscopic particle of dust can destroy an entire chip worth thousands of dollars. That's why semiconductor factories are among the cleanest places on Earth. In many of these facilities, the air is cleaner than inside a hospital operating room. Engineers wear full-body protective suits, not to protect themselves from the chips, but to protect the chips from them. Inside these factories, machines costing hundreds of millions of dollars fire beams of extreme ultraviolet light onto silicon wafers. The patterns they create are unbelievably small. So small that thousands of them could fit across the width of a single human hair. Layer by layer, billions of microscopic transistors are built onto a wafer. Each transistor acts like a tiny electronic switch. Alone, it's almost meaningless. But together, billions of them become the brain of a smartphone, a supercomputer, a fighter jet, or even an artificial intelligence system.
Only a handful of companies on Earth have the technology to manufacture the world's most advanced chips. And one company, located on a small island in East Asia, produces most of the world's cutting-edge semiconductors. Its name is TSMC. Without this single company, the global technology industry would look completely different. But this extraordinary dependence also created one of the biggest risks in modern history. Because when one link in this chain breaks, the entire world feels the consequences. And that's exactly what happened.
At the beginning of 2020, the world came to a sudden stop. The COVID-19 pandemic forced factories to close, borders to tighten, and millions of people to stay at home. At first, many industries believed demand would collapse. Car manufacturers made a decision that seemed perfectly logical. They canceled billions of dollars worth of semiconductor chip orders, expecting people to stop buying new vehicles. But something completely unexpected happened. Instead of spending money on travel or entertainment, millions of people began buying laptops, smartphones, webcams, tablets, gaming consoles, and home office equipment. Remote work exploded. Online education became the new normal. Streaming services reached record-breaking audiences. Cloud computing expanded at an incredible speed. Every one of these products depended on advanced semiconductor chips. Chip manufacturers quickly shifted their production toward the booming consumer electronics industry. Then, just months later, car companies returned, asking for their chips back. But it was already too late. Semiconductor factories were operating at full capacity. Production schedules had been booked months in advance. There was simply no room left. The automotive industry suddenly found itself at the back of the line. Factories around the world were forced to slow down or stop production completely. Thousands of unfinished vehicles sat in parking lots, waiting for just a handful of tiny chips. Some manufacturers removed features from new cars just to keep production moving. Others temporarily shut down entire factories. The crisis spread far beyond the automotive industry. Gaming consoles became almost impossible to buy. New smartphones faced long delays. Medical equipment manufacturers struggled to secure critical components. Prices increased across the global electronics market. Governments realized something they had ignored for years. The world's most advanced technologies depended on a supply chain concentrated in only a few places. What had started as a health crisis had quietly exposed one of the greatest strategic weaknesses of the modern world. The race to secure semiconductor production had officially begun, and it would reshape technology, business, and global politics for years to come. The chip shortage revealed a truth that many countries had ignored for decades. The world was not just competing for technology anymore. It was competing for control over the tiny pieces of silicon that power the future. Semiconductors had become more than just computer parts. They had become a strategic resource. Just like oil shaped the economy of the 20th century, chips could shape the power structure of the 21st century. Governments began investing hundreds of billions of dollars to rebuild semiconductor production closer to home. The United States started pushing to expand domestic chip manufacturing. China accelerated its efforts to become more independent in semiconductor technology. Countries across Europe and Asia realized that relying on only a few suppliers carried enormous risks, because the future would depend on these tiny machines more than ever before. Artificial intelligence needs advanced chips. Autonomous vehicles need advanced chips. Robots, satellites, medical technology, and defense systems all depend on them. The next generation of technology will not be built only with software. It will be built with the microscopic hardware hidden inside these chips. But the biggest question remains, can the world build enough of them? And what happens if the race for the most powerful chips becomes a battle for global dominance? A tiny piece of silicon changed the world once, and it may decide who leads the future. Because sometimes the most powerful things on Earth are not the biggest.
sometimes they are the smallest. And hidden inside a chip smaller than your fingernail is the future of humans.